So welcome everybody. This is going to be a lightning session on governing guest access with Entra ID identity governance. My name is Matthew Levy and I work at a company called Threatscape as a solutions architect focused on identity and access management with a specialization in Microsoft Entra ID. I am a Microsoft MVP in security, specifically in identity and access and Intune, funnily enough. Um, this session is going to be a fast-paced 30-minute session. I will try and do a live demo, so I'll keep things moving. If you have any questions along the way, please hold them just to the end. I've got some time at the end for some Q&A, but the goal for today is quite straightforward. By the time you leave, you will know exactly how to apply identity governance controls to your guest users. And I'll explain how the MAU or monthly active use billing model works, so you're not afraid of unexpected costs and where the common pitfalls are. So let's go. So here's just how the next 30 minutes will look. We'll start with the problem, because you cannot solve something if you have not clearly defined it. Then we will do a quick recap of the Entra identity governance capabilities so that everyone's on the same page before spending a bit of time on the monthly active use billing model, which is the piece that often causes confusion and inaction in organizations. After that, we'll cover the 4 key governance controls you should apply to guests, and then we'll jump into a live demo showing the Azure billing setup. This is something you can go and do in your own tenant today if you have guests, and we'll finish with some common pitfalls, key takeaways, and then if there's time, Q&A. So let's go. So let me start. The question is, how many guests do you have in your Entra ID tenant right now? And I'm guessing you probably don't know the answer to that off the top of your head. Don't worry, you're not alone. And that is actually part of the problem. So guest users are often the least governed identities in any organization. They get invited for a Teams meeting, a project, or some kind of partner integration, and then they just stay. Months later, years later, they still have access because nobody reviewed them, nobody removed it, nobody thought to even ask. And it's not just stale accounts. Guests routinely have access to sensitive SharePoint sites, Teams, channels, line of business applications. And so when a partner employee leaves their organization, your tenant has no way of knowing that automatically, so their account keeps working. And just incidentally, in an Entra ID tenant, the all users group includes guests as well. So the reason most organizations do not tackle this licensing confusion in terms of governing identities and guest identities is people hear identity governance and immediately think that requires the identity governance licensing for everyone. While that's true for member accounts in your tenant, that's not true for guests. And today I'm going to show you exactly why. But the bottom line is this: guests are often the biggest identity risk that you are not managing. Before we get into that billing model, let me quickly ground us in what Entra identity governance actually gives you, because governance is a broad term and it helps to be a bit more specific. There are 4 main pillars, and if we look at an Entra tenant, I've highlighted the identity governance piece. First, we've got entitlement management, which is how you bundle access into packages and let users request access in a structured, structured auditable way. Second, access reviews, which are periodic recertifications of who still needs access to what. By the way, there's a new AI-driven recommendations in access reviews now, so um, add some AI to the mix. Third, we've got lifecycle workflows, which can automate identity tasks when users are created, they change state, or if they're removed. And fourth, privileged identity management for just-in-time elevated access. Maybe a little bit less relevant for most guest scenarios, but it's worth knowing about for elevated partner accounts. And incidentally, you don't need identity governance licenses for PIM, you just need Entra ID P2 licenses. And as long as the tenant is licensed for that, guests can leverage PIM. For guest governance, however, the two you will use most are the entitlement management and access reviews. Those two cover the vast majority of what you need to govern identities properly. So this slide should remove the number one blocker um, to guest governance in most organizations. A lot of people get confused about how would you license your guests? There used to be a, a, a rule of thumb of 1 to 5, where one member account meant 5 guest accounts could be licensed or um, utilize the features that you're licensed for. Microsoft introduced the monthly active user billing model, or MAU, as a pay-per-use model for external identities within Entra ID. So that is basically a ticker or a tracker that's linked to an Azure subscription. It's not a per-user identity governance license assignment, and um, you can leverage the identity governance features as long as you have a single identity governance license in the tenant. The key difference compared to identity governance licensing is that you are charged based on how many external users actually authenticate in a governed month and leverage any of those identity governance features, not based on how many guest accounts exist in your directory. So if a guest account sits dormant and never signs in, it costs you nothing. The right-hand table here is a summary of the comparison. The key message: both models give you the same governance features uh, in terms of internal member accounts, whereas monthly active use just costs far less for external user scenarios. So this slide is one of the most practically useful slides in this deck, because this is where billing confusion actually lives. And so I'll go through the pros and the cons, or what it is and what it isn't. So monthly active use billing is triggered when a guest user authenticates and actively uses features that are exclusive to Entra ID governance. So if a guest signs in to request an access package, that is a billable monthly active use event for that calendar month. It's once per user per month, regardless of how many times they authenticate. What does not trigger billing is equally important. An admin viewing or editing a guest account in the portal, that's not billable. A member user completing an access review on behalf of a guest, that's not billable. Creating or configuring access packages, not billable. A guest account that exists but never authenticates, not billable. So at the bottom of the slide, you can see the one thing to remember is billing is based on authentication events, not identity count. Dormant guest accounts cost nothing from an MAU perspective, though they are still a security risk, which is exactly why you should be running access reviews on them. This model helps you in predicting and controlling costs much more accurately. Now let's talk about the 4 controls you should actually implement. This is the practical meat of the session. Uh, Access packages are your starting point for structured guest onboarding. Instead of ad hoc invitations and manual group assignments, you can create a package that bundles everything that an external partner needs. A Teams channel, a SharePoint site, maybe a group-based app assignment, and they request it through the My Access portal. You define who can approve, how long access lasts, and what happens when it expires. This is the right way to onboard external collaborators at scale. Access reviews are how you keep things clean over time. You schedule a quarterly or annual review, assign reviewers, potentially the resource owner or the guest sponsor, or even the guest themselves, and you set the policy to automatically remove access or deny a non-response if they don't respond to that access review. So this is your primary tool for eliminating stale guest access without manual effort. You can create just a stale guest access review as a once-off and clean up all your stale guests to start off with, and have recurring access reviews for guest accounts. So entitlement management is the broader framework around access packages. So you define connected organizations for your trusted partner domains so that guests from those domains automatically can qualify to request certain packages. This also incorporates the cross-tenant access policies that you may have set in your tenant. And then lifecycle workflows let you automate what happens at key moments. So there's trigger points or trigger moments when an access package will then expire, or when a guest account is flagged for removal, or when you want to send a reminder because before access is revoked. So that kind of like governs the life cycle of the guest accounts and closes the loop on that governance cycle. So together, these 4 controls give you a complete and auditable guest governance posture. All right, so next up, I will switch to a demo, and I will show you how to set up the billing. I just want to confirm that you can still see my screen, although I've shifted to the Entra portal. Can somebody give me some confirmation? Okay, I'm going to continue, assuming that you can see, because I haven't heard anything. So in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center, under Identity Governance, if we go to the dashboard, you'll see it brings up some of these tiles, and this tenant has got at least one identity governance license assigned to a user, a member user, not guests. And so this tenant is licensed for identity governance. And you'll see here, there's a tile, guest access governance, and it's saying identity governance for guest access is a premium add-on. We have the license, but we need to enable the monthly active use billing, and that's this get started button. So I click the get started button, and it prompts me to select a subscription. So I'm just going to select another subscription. It's recommended to have a dedicated identity governance subscription, so that you can separate the costs for the governance features. It does give you at the top an indication of how much it costs, 75 cents US per guest user, billed monthly. That's what I mentioned. Um, and we need to create a resource group or select an existing resource group. I'm actually going to create a new one, and I'm going to call it ANZ MAO. All right. Now, just one thing to note, you need to be an owner. So this user needs to be an owner on the subscription or the resource group if the resource group exists already, um, to be able to turn this feature on. So I hit the turn on button, and it does take a couple of seconds to notify me that it's created the resource group, and it has also uh, put a management lock on it, and it has then enabled the monthly active use billing. And so now we basically have the ability to manage those guest accounts. So we can go into entitlement management and create access packages. We can do access reviews and review stale guest accounts, et cetera, et cetera. So now we can leverage those identity governance features, and we'll get billed for guest accounts that use those on a monthly basis. Just incidentally, if that get started button is not visible, it's not in here as a tile, you can go to the Entra ID um, external identities blade, and then go to linked subscriptions. And you can link a subscription here in the same similar way. However, this is linking a subscription for external users, um, for external IDs, for example, but it basically requires the same kind of Azure subscription linking. So you can come in here and link a subscription. Funny that it doesn't show that subscription listed. Okay. The other thing that I want to show you, and I just want to check my time, um, is you can create, and it's recommended to create a budget for external ID or Entra identity governance. So in Azure, in the subscription, come into cost management and go to budgets. And I recommend creating a budget, and you can filter for specific metrics or meters in the subscription. Give it a name, uh, the period that you want it to reset, and recommend starting with $50, for example. And then you can set thresholds that will then alert you and notify you according to where you are on that budget. All right. And from within this, you can also view your current monthly active use consumption. All right, let's go back to the presentation. And uh, so I just want to go through the common pitfalls and cost controls. So um, the first pitfall is not having the correct permission on the target subscription, or at least the resource group where you will be linking MAU. So you need to be an owner, as it says in the documentation. The second pitfall is not setting a budget alert before you start. Um, Maybe a large Teams meeting where hundreds of guests authenticate could create a spike and create a surprise from a billing perspective. It takes you 5 minutes to create the alert, a budgeting alert. So just do that. The third pitfall is the most common misunderstanding, confusing MAU coverage with Entra ID P2 coverage. MAU billing covers governance features for external users. If you want PIM for internal users or access reviews for member accounts, those still require identity governance licenses or Entra ID P2 and assigned to those member users. but guests can leverage the P2 features at no cost without an MAU linked subscription even. MAU does not replace ID governance for everything though. It replaces it specifically for external user governance scenarios. The fourth pitfall is linking the wrong subscription. If you link your primary workload subscription, your external identity billing gets mixed in with compute, storage, and everything else, making cost attribution very difficult. So use a dedicated subscription for identity-related costs. And then the 2 tips at the bottom are just positive things. Use access package auto expiry as a feature, and run quarterly access reviews. Both of those will reduce your active guest account, which directly reduces your monthly active use exposure and your attack surface at the same time. So let me just bring it all together with 6 things I want you to remember. Number 1, you can govern guests without ID Gov licenses for them. MAU billing covers the full feature set for external identities. Just need to have an ID Gov license in the tenant. Number 2, provided your tenant has an ID Gov license for member users, you can govern guests. Number 3, entitlement management and access reviews are your highest value controls. If you implement just these 2. Fourthly, billing only triggers on an active guest account utilizing a governance feature. A dormant guest costs nothing financially, but it's still a risk operationally and from a security posture perspective. Number 5, link a dedicated subscription and set a budget alert before you start. Number 6, start with access reviews. If you're not sure where to begin, they are the fastest win. You'll reduce stale access, reduce monthly active use exposure, and improve your security posture in a single access review. So after today's session, run an access review against all of your guest users. That single step will show you exactly who you have, what they can access, and give you a defensible, auditable process for cleaning it up. And this is my thank you slide, and I've got some resources. There are some links to read. You can access these slides if you go to my GitHub repository. So thank you for joining the session. If there's some time, I can take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Thank you so much. Let me have a look at the comments. No questions so far. I think it is all because you have a really clear guidance on the topic. And this is really something exciting, which align with our Azure Landing Zone best practice. We can link the Entra ID cost to the identity subscription, set up the cost budgets, and also easily to make a cost control from a central place by using the cost management. That is really an awesome feature to know today.
Yep.
And I think we are almost right of time. And for the audience who may have any futures in the future, feel free to reach out to Matthew as he has already shared his contact info. And I think thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you for your effort to make the session in your late evening. Really appreciate for your effort. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of Global Azure, everybody.